Mustahab. Mustahab meaning recommended. We know these terms already, we studied them previously. Farad means mandatory, required, obligatory. The second was wajib. Wajib means necessary. What's the difference between the farad and the wajib? Farad means that the whole act depends on that. And wajib means it's a necessary component of the act. Without it, the act will be complete, but there will be a penalty. Whereas if a farad is omitted from the act, then the act is not complete itself. The whole action has to be repeated. That's the difference between farad and wajib in a classical sense. And then there are certain actions for which wudu is recommended. Mandub, mustahab. This is the level of classification that we studied previously. In not so clear words. But this is exactly their sentiment, and they become popular. Zuhdi Jasir, Asra Nomani, Irshad Manji, all this. Irshad Manji always comes up again and again. Okay, these people, they want to become popular. It's the truth. They want to become popular, so they'll say, oh, you know, there's too much extremism. It's known to be Darul Harb. Darul Harb means lands that are in either direct fights with Muslims, or the Muslims living there are not very not able to live peacefully or practice the symbols of their deen freely. Okay, so such lands Rasulullah is speaking about. Now, what about giving a Quran as a hadiyah, as a gift to a non-Muslim friend? My advice is try to give one without the Arabic font. Or if you give it to them, then explain to them, because people are very respectful. They will ask you, do I need to wash, do I need to do... Explain to them nicely that they are not allowed to touch those verses, the verses that are in Arabic, without wudu. Remember the story of Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu, when he embraced Islam, his sister required that he wash before he touched the scrolls of the Quran. Right? And where was this? Meccan period. Not Medinan period, Meccan period. Which shows us that ritual purity was a part of the faith even earlier on in the Prophet ﷺ's era, not after Medina Tayyibah. Anyway, so touching the Quran, لا يمسه إلا المطهرون. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, they are not allowed to touch it except the clean ones, those who are excessively clean, which none may touch except the purified. This rule applies equally to the writing and to the blank spaces. Some of our scholars have, okay, I just mentioned that to you. Necessary wudu. What is necessary wudu? This is ablution for circling the Kaaba, tawaf. A tawaf, because Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, tawaf of the Kaaba is like salah, except you talk in it. You're allowed to talk in it. In salah, you're not allowed to talk. Have you seen people talk in tawaf? Cell phones, right? Everywhere they're talking around. Papa, umrah tawaf ka Yeah, well, people do it, right? It doesn't nullify the tawaf, but it takes away all the spirituality, it takes away all the rewards. But people do it, right? They want to. This is the. Cell phones are very beneficial, but they can also be very detrimental. And this is one of the areas where having a cell phone is detrimental, okay? Because a person gets distracted while they're trying to focus. Okay, so tawaf, wudu is necessary, but it's not obligatory. What's the difference? I mentioned to you earlier. If you make salah without wudu, there's no compensation for it. You have to repeat the salah. But if you make tawaf without wudu, then you have to pay a penalty. The tawaf is done, but you pay a penalty, without which the tawaf will not be accepted. Do you get see the difference? So the dependency of salah is on wudu, but the dependency of tawaf is not on wudu. See, you get what I'm saying? Especially if the tawaf is what type? It's not a farad tawaf. Which is a farad tawaf? Tawaf ziyarah. Which is a wajib tawaf? Tawaf wida'. What's tawaf wida'? The tawaf we make when we're the farewell tawaf. Okay. There's 3 tawafs we make. The arrival tawaf, tawaf qudum. Then we make tawaf ziyarah, which is during the 5 days of Hajj. And then we make tawaf wida' at the end. Okay. So tawaf wida' is a wajib tawaf. Tawaf ziyarah is a farad tawaf. So tawaf ziyarah is a farad tawaf. So you have to have wudu for that one, no doubt. But for tawaf wida', if you don't have wudu, then you pay a penalty. And the penalty will compensate.
So for Umrah is the same thing?
Yeah. The Umrah one is also tawaf, it's a wajib one. This is ablution for circling the Kaaba, because of his statement, upon him be peace and blessings. Circling the Kaaba is like prayer, other than you may speak in it. Thus, whoever does speak should only speak well, the Prophet ﷺ said. However, because it is not an actual prayer, its validity is not dependent on purity. Therefore, if a necessary circling is performed without purity, sacrifice is necessary. If an obligatory circling is performed while sexually impure, a camel is necessary. Charity is necessary if an optional circling is performed without ablution. What's an optional circling? Just normal tawaf. Normal tawaf. Not for any reason. Not tawaf wida', not tawaf ziyarah, not tawaf of umrah, not tawaf. Just a normal tawaf. That's an optional tawaf. Even then, you're required to do seven circles and then 2 rak'ah. Okay. But then it says if you don't have wudu during the optional one, then you give a sadaqah. Not sacrificing an animal. But if you don't have wudu, during an obligatory one, then you have or a mandatory or a necessary tawaf, then you will give a sacrifice of either a camel or a cow. Right.
One question quickly. When you do tawaf and it breaks, can you go out? Will you continue?
Yeah.
Optional tawaf, I mean, local people do it or?
Optional tawaf? Anybody does it. But if you're in the haram, I mean, if you're there for more than 2 days or more than a day, you finished your umrah, then you can make tawaf as many times as you want, as long as you make 7 at once with 2 rak'ah at the end. 7 at once and 2 rak'ah at the end.
Do we have the rewards for doing the?
Yes, that is the greatest action you can do then, the most rewarding of actions. Because you can pray anywhere else. You can pray 2 rak'ah at home, in your local masjid, you can read Quran anywhere else. But the 2 things you can't do anywhere else is looking at the Kaaba and making tawaf of the Kaaba. Except Qadianis, they have their own Kaaba somewhere else.
When you finish the tawaf, then you pray 2 rak'ah.
Sorry?
After circling 7 times, then you pray 2
Yes, after circling 7 times, you pray 2 rak'ah actually. And the requirement is that prayer is performed behind Maqam Ibrahim, but anywhere in the haram behind Maqam, not directly behind Maqam Ibrahim, anywhere in the haram behind Maqam Ibrahim. Because praying directly behind Maqam Ibrahim will be difficult due to the crowds. Now, recommended. These are instances when it is recommended for a person to perform ablution. What are those instances? There are many instances in which ablution is recommended. Included in these is touching Islamic books, simply for i'zaz and honor. If you're touching material which may have a verse of Quran in it, which may have a hadith in it, book of fiqh, book of hadith, although it's not a requirement to have wudu, it's highly recommended that a person be pure. Imam Ghazali rahimahullah has mentioned this in his here as well, from the etiquettes of knowledge, that a person be extremely pure and clean when they approach sacred knowledge. Allowance has been made for a person in the state of ritual impurity in touching such books with the exception of Quranic commentaries, as has been mentioned in Durra. So the ulama state that Quranic commentaries will be in the same ruling as the Quran itself. The Quranic commentaries will be in the same ruling as the Quran itself. But other Islamic books, you don't have to have wudu, but it's highly recommended to have wudu. This statement necessitates the necessity of ablution for touching Quranic commentaries, thereby placing it in the second category. Okay. Now, further instances include sleeping in a state of purity. So it's recommended that a person make wudu before they go to bed. On waking from sleep, which is quite natural if you're going to wake up for Salatul Qiyamul Layl, Tahajjud, or you're going to wake up for Salatul Fajr. Renewing it to maintain it constantly because of the tradition of Bilal radiallahu anhu. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Oh Bilal, I witnessed you, I saw you in Jannah, I heard your footsteps in Jannah." So what is it that you do? Is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala raised your status to such an extent? He said, I don't neglect praying 2 rak'ah. Was it 2 rak'ah after every wudu that I make? But Bilal radiallahu anhu, whenever my wudu would break, I would make wudu and pray 2 rak'ah. So being constantly in the state of wudu is very desirable. It's light upon light, ablution upon ablution if the sitting has been changed. What they're saying is that repetition of ablution is a good thing if you have used the ablution for something. If you make ablution and you're just in the same spot and then after 5 minutes you decide to do ablution again, that's wastage. If you make ablution and then you've been traveling or you go somewhere and then it's time for salah, but you already have ablution, to make ablution again is a good thing. It's light upon light. Or if you have made ablution and you prayed or you read Quran or you performed any action that requires wudu and you still have wudu for the next prayer, just to make wudu again is recommended. just to make wudu again is recommended. After backbiting, which is mentioning your brother in his absence with that which he dislikes, or lying, telling lies, which is to fabricate that which is not. What is backbiting? The definition of backbiting Rasulullah ﷺ gave us, ذِكْرُكَ أَخَاكَ بِمَا يَكْرَهُ, mentioning something about your brother that he dislikes, that he would dislike if he heard. So the Sahaba radiallahu anhum said, oh Rasulullah, how about if he has that? How about if he actually has that thing in him, that characteristic? So Rasulullah said, that is ghiba. If he doesn't have that characteristic, is buhtan. Buhtan means false accusation. Then you get two sins, one of ghiba and one of buhtan. See the difference? Rasulullah said, ghiba is to mention something about your brother regarding a characteristic of his or hers that he would dislike if you mention in his presence. That's what ghiba is. So the Sahaba said, oh Rasulullah, how about if he really has that? For example, you're making fun of somebody being poor, you're making fun of somebody's clothes, or you're making fun of somebody's walk, or you're making fun of somebody's talk. That guy stutters and you copy him behind his back just to make fun of him. He wouldn't like it if you did it in front of him. So Sahaba said, oh Rasulullah, how about if he has that characteristic? He said, that's exactly what ghiba means. If he doesn't have that characteristic, then it's a false accusation. So you get the sin of backbiting and the sin of false accusation. So if a person engages in such a haram activity, it's better to renew your wudu, because the wudu is kind of spiritless now, because you've engaged in major sin. Telling lies, which is to fabricate that which is not and is not permitted. You know, we always engage in white lies and telling small lies here and there all the time. Okay? So, which is to fabricate that which is not and is not permitted, except in the likes of war, rectifying where discord exists, and pleasing the wife. What does that mean, pleasing the wife? It means, hey honey, I bought you these flowers. Wow, how much did you spend? Yeah, $30. You really picked them up from Walmart. Okay? So, I mean, if you go to a florist, you're going to pay $30. If you go to Walmart, you pay, what, $5, $6? Okay. I'm not speaking from experience, I'm just saying. Okay? So, you guys always assume things. Rasul said, إِيَّاكُمْ وَالظَّنِّ, stay away from assumptions. إِنَّ الظَّنَّ أَكْذَبُ الْحَدِيثِ. Right, tail-bearing. What is tail-bearing? Namima. Namima means, in order to say jughal khori, right? Jughal khori. Rasul said, لَا يَدْخُلُ الْجَنَّةَ قَتَّاتٍ, a tale-bearer will not enter paradise. What does jughal khori mean? When you stir trouble, tale-bearing, you come and tell this person a story about that person to annoy him, and then you go and tell that person a story about this person to annoy them, right? And you annoy people against each other. Rasulullah said he witnessed two graves. Rasulullah saw two graves, and he said, both of these graves, people are being punished. وَمَا يُعَذَّبَانِ فِي كَبِيرٍ. Rasulullah said, they're not being punished for anything big, something that you consider very small, but they're big in Allah's eyes. One of them was, he wasn't saving himself from sprinkles of urine. And the other one, he used to tailbear. He used to cause fights between, and you know, people do that a lot, especially jamjas. You know jamjas? Who's a jamja? Right? You know, you have jamjas, how do you say jamja? Cronies, right? You have your cronies and people that, you know, they'll come and, the people that want to gain your friendship or your companionship, they look up to you and they want to get close to you, so they'll come and tell you stuff about your enemy or somebody who dislikes you, just to get closer to you. That's what, I don't know how to say it in English. Jamja. What's a jamja in English? Spoon. Okay. It's called a spoon. That's a literal translation, but I should explain what jamja is. So tail-bearing, of course, is haram. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala dislikes it, and people engage in it a lot, and they don't even know they're engaging in it, which is striving to convey information from one group of people to another, seeking to cause dissension. Okay? If a person engages in such action, then they should renew their wudu, even though it doesn't break the wudu, but they should renew their wudu. It's recommended to make the wudu again after any sin and after reciting bad poetry, because ablution expiates minor sins. After laughing loud whilst not praying. If you laugh loud whilst praying, the adult, his wudu breaks. Remember the hadith Rasulullah said, whoever is in prayer and he does qahqaha. Qahqaha is the actual term in Arabic Qahqaha means that a person laughs to such a, they raise their voice to such an extent that the person next to them can hear them. That's called qahqaha. That's called loud laughing. Not loud laughing is when only you can hear it. Loud laughing is when the person next to you can hear it. If a person does that in salah, their salah breaks and their wudu breaks too. But it's not very logical that, because wudu usually breaks from impurity, right? Right? Wudu breaks from impurity. If you look at all of the instances in which wudu breaks, they're all because of impurities or the possibility of impurity, like falling asleep. If you fell asleep in certain positions, it will break your wudu. Even if impurity may not have left your body, it will still break your wudu. So generally, wudu is broken due to impurities or the possibility of impurity. But this is only one instance outside of it in which wudu breaks, and that is laughing loud in salah because of hadith. Rasulullah said it, and you can't argue against the hadith. So that's called qahqaha. We're going to study that in the next chapter, the articles that break wudu.
I'm sorry to ask you a question.
Yes, okay.
The question is this, no, I know that. See, when you run the suppose Juma prayer, you pray, finish, then you pray. Inside people is talking.
During the khutbah?
No, not the khutbah.
Oh, okay.
So when prayer finish, I'm praying sunnah or nafar, and it's in the mosque, in the praying, and the people are talking this, then you can hear it. So what is that? Is it my fault or their fault?
That's their fault. That doesn't break the wudu.
Okay.
It doesn't break
I
the
just want
wudu.
to make sure.
No, qahqaha means laughing loud.
And
The person in prayer laughing loud breaks their prayer and their wudu, not anybody else's. So if somebody else is laughing loud outside of prayer, it's not going to have an impact on one's prayer. Okay.
Quick question. So, I guess that's probably a different question, but that's something like, does that invalidate your salah, like if you're just laughing in general?
Validate your wudu.
Okay.
Why do
If
they-
it's allowed, huh?
Why do they not laugh when they're praying?
You can. Just say you're praying and your kid in front of you does something funny, right? It can make you laugh. It can happen.
yeah, how's it coming?
But you must
Yeah. It can happen. Yeah.
So why does it say we should make wudu if we're just laughing outside of?
Outside of it's just saying because it's not the practice of a believer to engage in such laughter. A person, the hadith mentions Rasulullah was laugh. He would never laugh excessively like that. So it's just against the etiquette of the believer that he laughs so excessively in that. In that, the person should be more focused on the akhirah, so on and so forth. Obviously, it's difficult to not laugh because there are certain instances that really make a person laugh when you see something hilarious or hear something hilarious. But if a person engages in that, it's best. Like in the Quran, Allah Subhanahu wa Taala says regarding well, the scholars say that excessive laughing kills the soul. It kills the heart because it makes you ghafil and unmindful of Allah Subhanahu wa Taala. After having washed and carried a deceased body, now, if you are taking part in the ghusl, the washing of a deceased body, or the carrying of the deceased body, hamal of the janazah, carrying it, or ghusl of the janazah, then it's recommended that a person make wudu after it. It's recommended. It doesn't invalidate your wudu, but it's recommended. And if you read in the commentary here, 96, there's a bit more detail, inshallah, regarding that. We're going to move on. For every new prayer time, it's recommended that a person, recommended again, because this is more befitting its state. Before the ritual bath, so if a person needs a ghusl, they're in hadath akbar, they had been with their wife, or had a wet dream, or a woman who's coming off her menstrual cycle or her postnatal bleeding, she requires a bath in the state of hadath akbar, and you're about to take a ritual bath, then before that to make wudu first is a sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, so it's recommended that a person make wudu for that. On eating, drinking, sleeping, or repeating sexual intercourse for a sexually impure person. So if somebody has already engaged in intercourse with their spouse, and then they wanted to repeat, or they wanted to go downstairs, eat something, drink something, it's recommended that a person make wudu before they do that. And if they can't make wudu, at least they should wash their hands. At least they should wash their hands. This is the recommendation of the fuqaha. When angry, because ablution extinguishes the anger. And this is through experience as well. When you're angry, you make wudu. Usually with cold water, you calm down, inshallah. I don't get angry much, but I'm just saying. When reciting Quran or reading and narrating traditions out of respect for their nobility. So if you're reading the Quran without a mushaf, you're reading the Quran without a mushaf, like a hafiz or anybody who knows Surah Yasin by heart and they want to read Surah Yasin on their way to work, for example. You're not required to have wudu if you're reading by memorization. You're not required to have wudu if you're reading by memorization, but out of respect, it's good for a person to have wudu because you're reciting the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When studying knowledge of sacred law, again, for the same reason, out of respect. On performing the adhan, because wudu is not a requirement for adhan. Wudu is a requirement for salah, but it's not a requirement for adhan. But don't do it for maghrib because then you need to go rush off and do your wudu and then come back and miss a rak'ah or two, right? Because in the Hanafi maghrib especially, you perform your maghrib straight after the adhan, right or not?
Yes.
Okay, in the non-Hanafi schools they read 2 rak'ah, right? And by the way, I think a diverse masjid should have a few minutes between the adhan of maghrib and maghrib prayer to cater to the brothers that want to perform those 2 rak'ah. I thought they would have done that here. They do it in other masjids across the country because you have some brothers that are from other madhahib. They want to perform 2 rak'ah between the adhan and between the iqamah of maghrib. It doesn't take long. It's just 2 minutes, 3 minutes. If we, yeah, I think the Quran Academy should implement it, inshallah. Okay.
Sometimes I do it.
I don't want to take the stick for it. You guys can, inshallah.
So that
They do it in
nothing
summer
else.
time.
Yeah, it's enough for the prayer. There is some detail about it, whether Rasulullah actually prayed it or not, or was it some Sahaba that prayed it and Rasulullah didn't disapprove. And so there are some narrations about it. We can discuss that in more detail when we come to the salah, what salahs are considered nafil and what salahs are not nafil and so on and so forth, which salahs are sunnah. Okay. On performing the adhan, call to commence and sermon, not khutbah of Friday, Jummah. Khutbah of Jummah requires wudu. Khutbah of Jummah requires wudu, but this is khutbah of nikah. So if you're performing a nikah, if you had the fortune to do that, inshallah, then it's good to have wudu. When visiting the Prophet ﷺ out of respect for his presence and for entering his mosque, Masjid Nabawi, is good that a person be spiritually focused. Because without wudu, you can't be focused. It's very difficult to be focused without wudu. In anything, even if you're reading an Islamic book. Without wudu, it's very hard to be focused. But when you have wudu, then you freshen up and you can be more focused. On standing at Arafah, because of the nobility of the place and because Allah boasts to the angels about those standing at Arafah. So it's good for a person to be in a state of wudu in Arafah during Hajj. On going between Safa and Marwa so as to perfect the worship and because of the nobility of the 2 sites. After eating camel meat, there is some narrations that say eating camel meat because of the heat it develops, it will burn, it will nullify the wudu. But this is an abrogated hadith according to the Ahnaf. Hanafi, they say that it doesn't nullify the wudu, but it's recommended for a person to make wudu after consuming camel meat. More generally, following from the previous point, to remove oneself from disagreement between all scholars, such as on touching a woman or on touching the genitals with the palm of the hand. By doing this, the worship would be valid by agreement, thereby securing oneself in religious matters. What this is saying basically is that there are certain actions that nullify the wudu according to some fuqaha, and according to other fuqaha, those actions will not nullify the wudu, such as kissing the wife, for example. If a person kisses the wife, then according to some fuqaha, the wudu breaks. According to the Hanafi, it doesn't break. But to save yourself and to be on the cautious side, just renew the wudu. That's what he's saying here. To be on the cautious side, just renew the wudu. Or if a person touched their genitals without any clothes there, they just touched their genitals without any cloth, bila ha'il, then with the bare palm of the hand, then by doing this, if a person does this according to the Hanafis, again, your wudu doesn't break because it's just like touching any other part of your body, right? But according to the Shawafi' and other fuqaha, some other fuqaha, the wudu will break. And because the wudu will break, according to the Shawafi', it's best for a person to just renew their wudu to be on the safe side. Now, for an imam, it's even more important. For an imam, it's even more important. I mentioned this earlier, I think. I don't know if I remember, if you remember, But if you're an imam and you're serving a diverse crowd and you have in your crowds people who are Shafi'i, people who are not Shafi'i, so on and so forth, then to save yourself and to make sure everybody's salah is valid, it's best to make wudu during such instances. Like for example, another case is the case of wiping on socks. And we're going to mention this subject in detail, inshallah, when we come to that. It's going to come soon, very soon. Some people are very eager about this subject. Wiping on socks. Masah al-khuffayn. So what socks are allowed to wipe on, what socks we're not allowed to wipe on. By the way, there is this website called sealskins.com. Sealskins.com. SEALSKINZ.com. Sealskins.com. And they do these socks that are really thick that meet the requirements of masah. And they're not leather. They're not leather, and the ulama have actually verified it. Okay, some very, very conservative and strict ulama have verified it. So you can wear them in your shoes very comfortably. You can go through immigrations and everything with them, and you know when you're on the plane, that's the most difficult time to wash your feet on the plane because those sinks are really difficult to wash your feet when you're making wudu. So if you can inshallah order them and order one for me and I'll pay you inshallah as well. Sealskins.com. Okay? Right, sealskins.com is a good website inshallah. It's verified by ulama. There's many different types of socks you can get there as well. There's many different types. I think like it'll be cheaper if you go on Amazon. You can get them for like $22 a pair. I know it's expensive for socks, but you know, but you have to learn the rulings of masah al-khuffayn before you start wearing them, because you have to make a complete wudu before you wear them. Then you're only allowed to make masah, and for 24 hours. After 24 hours, it expires, and 24 hours begins from the time your wudu breaks. So if you do full wudu 8 in the morning and you wore the socks and your wudu broke at 10, then 24 hours begins from 10. Not from 8 when you made the wudu, from the time you broke your wudu. And it's 72 hours for a traveler. 72 hours for a traveler. But if you take the socks off, then you have to wash your feet. Once you remove the socks, you have to wash it. We're going to learn these rulings inshallah, they're coming up. But right. Nullifying agents of ablution. This is known as nawaqidul wudu. Nawaqid. Nawaqid is the plural of naqid. Naqid means breaker. Naqada yanqudu means to break in Arabic. So which actions nullify the wudu? Anything that comes from the front and rear orifice other than wind from the front orifice according to the most correct position. So by anything they mean that even if like an ant or something came out, an ant came out a person's backside for example, that will also nullify the wudu. This nullifies the ablution even if it is a small and even if it is not normal, such as tapeworm or a pebble. Okay.
Is it anything outside of air?
And anything other than air. If air comes out of the front, it won't nullify the wudu. Okay? But if air comes out from the back, it will definitely nullify the wudu. So anything from the back will nullify wudu, anything from the front other than air will nullify the wudu. That's what we're saying here. Wind from the front orifice does not nullify because it is a convulsion and not wind. Even if it is wind, there is no impurity involved. However, wind from the back orifice nullifies because it passes over impurity. The wind itself is pure, therefore according to most scholars, breaking wind does not make the wet garment of a person impure. So if you pass wind, it doesn't make the garment you were wearing impure. Right? But it nullifies the wudu. Okay? Also, out of caution, the wind of the woman who urinates and defecates from one orifice nullifies. Okay? Obviously there's 3 orifices for a woman they bleed from, urinate from, and what they pass stool from. But they're saying that if, for example, there is a woman who for some reason that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best regarding that woman, she defecates and urinates from the same hole, for example, okay, just scenario, then it says that out of caution, the wind of the woman who urinates and defecates from one orifice nullifies as well. Generally, wind only from the back orifice will nullify, not from the front orifice. Coming out of urine is determined by the appearance of wetness at the head of the orifice or the foreskin, if uncircumcised, according to the correct position. Everybody knows for experience whether they have passed urine or not. Right? Everybody knows from experience. We don't need to explain this. This is very obvious. Giving birth without the appearance of blood, is that even possible? but the fuqaha discussed it. They just discussed it to come to a conclusion. Giving birth without the appearance of blood, even though it's impossible. In this instance, according to the statement of Abu Yusuf and the final statement of Muhammad, who's Muhammad? Muhammad ibn al-Hasan al-Shaybani. Not the Prophet ﷺ, but Muhammad ibn al-Hasan al-Shaybani, the student of Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah. So he says, according to Imam Abu Yusuf and Imam Muhammad ibn al-Hasan al-Shaybani, the woman is not considered to be in a state of postnatal bleeding if no blood appears. And because she's not in the state of postnatal bleeding, then she doesn't need to take a bath either, because there is no postnatal bleeding. This is their opinion. This is the correct stance because postnatal bleeding is connected to blood, and here no blood is present. Abu Hanifa rahimahullah holds that she performs a ritual bath out of caution, because giving birth is never free of even a small amount of blood. This has been authenticated in Fatawa and is the fatwa of Sadr Shaheed, Allah have mercy with him. So these are all Hanafi fuqaha, jurists. I mean, this is the same for anybody, and this would be the same for any of the other fuqaha. Number 3, flowing impurity from other than the front and rear orifice, such as blood and pus. This is according to Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah and many of the Sahaba radiallahu anhum as mentioned here. This is because of his statement. This is very clear. Blood or pus flowing from any other part of the body other than the front or rear orifice. Flowing. Flowing means that it moves from its place. Flowing means that it moves from its place. This will nullify the wudu. This is the school of the 10 promised Sahaba, the Ashara Mubashara. They had the same opinion. Ibn Mas'ud radiallahu anh, Ibn Abbas radiallahu anh, Zayd ibn Thabit, Abu Musa Ash'ari radiallahu anhum, and other leading companions, as well as major figures amongst the students of the companions, such as Al-Hasan al-Basri, Ibn Sirin, Muhammad ibn Sirin rahimahumullah. They held the same opinion that flowing blood will nullify the wudu.
If you have a wound or something and the blood flows, you wipe it and you make wudu and it flows again.
Then you wipe it again, make wudu again. You should make wudu when it stops.
What if the time for prayer is there and you don't?
Then you have to. You can't make wudu if it's continuously bleeding. And the question that you might be asking, I'm not sure, correct me if I'm wrong, is about the ma'adur. When is a person considered excused?
Exactly.
When is a person considered excused? Because some people they suffer from something in Urdu they call naksir. What is it in English? Naksir.
Hemophilia.
Sorry?
Hemophilia.
Hemophilia, is that when you're continuously bleeding from the nose? Like some people suffer this constant nosebleed, or there are some people that are suffering from wind and the passing of wind. They can't even find 10 minutes without the passing of wind. There's some people who have these sicknesses, they have these problems, health problems. There's some people who have health problems where they're constantly passing urine, even little bits of urine, or they have a bag of urine that's attached to them because they're constantly passing urine. So when does a person fall under the category of ma'adur? Ma'adur is a person who is considered excused. Udhr means excuse. Ma'adur, the ruling of a ma'adur. So the fuqaha say that a person is considered excused when this passing of impurity continues for one entire salah time period. For one entire salah time period. If a person is just experiencing it for 15 minutes, and he's like, oh no, it's not stopping, I'm just going to pray salah anyway, and it stops. That's not considered a ma'adur. But to be considered a ma'adur, that behavior or that practice or that passing of that impurity has to continue for one entire salah time period where he can't even find the sufficient time to make a full wudu and pray the salah. How long does that take generally? 10 minutes? 10 minutes? Let's say he prays with khushu', right? 10 minutes. Okay, wudu will take 2 minutes and salah will take another like 5 to 7 minutes, right? A person can't even find that much time without the pause in impurity. If a person can't even find that much time, he would be considered ma'adur by the fuqaha. Okay? Now the ruling for the ma'adur is that he will make a fresh wudu for every salah time. Not for every salah, but for every salah time. So when dhuhr time begins, he will make a fresh wudu. And that wudu will be sufficient till asr time. And any number of salah he wants to perform, he can perform unless he nullifies his wudu by any other means. Do you get it? Not by the problem that he's in. Let's say for example his problem is nosebleed. He just can't, he continuously bleeds. He can't even find the space of 7 or 8 minutes, 10 minutes where he could make wudu and pray. So he makes wudu for every fresh salah time. Okay? During that salah time, the continuous nosebleed will not break his wudu because he's excused in that case. But any other reason he breaks his wudu, like he goes to urinate or he passes wind or something else, that would nullify the wudu. Okay? And he could pray as many number of rakats as he wants with that wudu when he makes wudu for every fresh salah time. So by the entrance of a new salah time, his wudu will break automatically. So if he made a wudu for dhuhr and nothing happened between that time that nullifies the wudu, just the entry of asr will nullify that wudu. Yeah, because he's ma'adhur. Okay, is that clear? There is a chapter on ma'adhur actually. I remember very clearly there is a chapter on ma'adhur because I studied this book when I was in the second year in depth. Not this actually, the Arabic one. See, this book here, Nur al-Idah, isn't the actual text of Nur al-Idah, it's the text with some commentary as well. The actual Nur al-Idah, the method of Nur al-Idah is more brief than this. Okay. And then there is one commentary known as Maraq al-Falah, and then there is a third commentary known as Tahtawi, which is a commentary of the commentary. So Hashiyat al-Tahtawi ala Maraq al-Falah. That's what it's called. Flowing in relation to the front and rear orifice is the appearance at the head of the orifice. However, in relation to other than the two orifices, flowing impurity is the impurity crossing over to a point that needs to be washed. Okay? Even if washing is merely recommended. Therefore, blood that moves from one point in the eye to another does not nullify the ablution. However, blood that flows at the back of the nose does nullify the ablution. Okay? Because the nose is washed in salah, right? Whereas the eye is not. Inside the eye is not. Blood and pus nullify ablution. In addition, water that seeps from the breast, navel, or ear due to a medical ailment, according to the correct position, nullifies. Only if there is a medical ailment that causes that water to flow from the ears, it will nullify the wudu. Otherwise, not. Vomiting a mouthful of food or water. Vomiting water nullifies even if the water has not changed. Furthermore, if on vomiting a black burnt substance or a yellow substance is brought up, this too nullifies the ablution. You understand? So it doesn't matter even if the color of the water, if you just vomited water, it will break the wudu. Doesn't matter if the color changes or not. And obviously if the color changes, it will definitely nullify the wudu. With all the above mentioned, the ablution is nullified if a mouthful is vomited. How about if a person doesn't vomit a mouthful, but he vomits a small amount a few times? Then if all of them can be gathered and become a mouthful, then it will nullify the wudu. The ablution is nullified because these would have become impure as a result of coming in contact with that which is at the bottom of the stomach. This is the opinion of the 10 promised paradise. In addition, the Prophet ﷺ vomited and then performed ablution. Tirmidhi states that this is the most authentic tradition in this section. Also, the Prophet ﷺ said, ablution is repeated from 7. Urine drops, flowing blood, vomit, mouthful of vomit, sleeping on one side, loud laughter of a man in prayer, and emission of blood. The definition of a mouthful is the amount that the mouth cannot hold without difficulty. We all know what a mouthful is, according to the most correct explanation given. It is also said that it is the amount that prevents speech. If the vomit is, I don't think anyone can speak when they're vomiting anyway, whether it's a small amount or a big amount. If the vomit is in spurts, the sum amount of all the spurts is considered the cause, if the cause is the same, according to Muhammad. Thus, if the total amount is a mouthful, it nullifies. Abu Yusuf regards the facts as the place being the same, if it's coming from the same place. Okay. The water from the mouth of a sleeping person is pure if it comes from the head by agreement. The same is the case with water rising from the stomach. Sleep, we're talking about the mouth, the water itself. We're not speaking about water being nullified.
The water from the mouth is basically drool then?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So saying that because it's clean, it doesn't make your pillowcase najis. That's what they're saying. Water that comes out of the mouth of a sleeping person, which is drool. Blood in the mouth that dominates or is equal to the saliva. So if a person has a gum bleed or something of that sort, then it will nullify the wudu if you spit and the blood is dominant over the saliva. This can be seen from, what can it be seen from? the color. Sleeping such that the rear is not firmly seated on the ground. If a person sleeps in the position where the rear is completely seated on the ground, firmly on the ground, it will not nullify the wudu. Why? Because there is no possibility of him passing stool in that situation, in that position. But if a person sleeps in a manner that allows his rear to be comfortable and loose, basically, where he is able to pass gas, then even whether he passes gas or not, sleeping in that position will nullify the wudu. Even if he's leaning against something and you remove that thing. If a person is sleeping against the ground, a person is sleeping with his rear on the ground firm, but he's leaning against a wall, and the wall was removed, he will fall, right? But even then his wudu won't break because his rear was firmly on the ground, wouldn't allow him to pass gas in that situation. In any other position, you're laying on your side, or you're laying on your front, or you're sleeping in a way where your rear is not firmly on the ground. Any other position in which the rear is not firmly on the ground, it will nullify the wudu, whether you pass gas or not during your sleep.
Is there a time limit?
No. So basically, if a person is just drowsy, okay, and he's just basically napping, small nap, but he's still aware of what's going on around him, that's not considered sleep. Sleep is when he loses his mind completely. He doesn't know he doesn't know what's going on around him. That's
Even
sleep.
if he's literally on the ground. For
Yeah.
example.
Yes. Even if he's in a deep sleep, but he's sitting firmly on the ground, his wudu won't break. Because the basis is the rear being firmly on the ground or not. The basis isn't whether he's leaning on something or not. The common misunderstanding in people is that if he's leaning on something, wudu will break. If he's not leaning, wudu will not break. But that's not the basis. The basis is whether the rear is firmly on the ground or not. Yes, what's your question?
So, this is when you're sitting. What if you're firmly on the ground, rear is firmly on the ground, but laying? Is that considered
No.
firm?
No, because you're still leaning. If you're leaning, it doesn't matter if you're leaning on something. It's all about the rear being firmly on the ground or not.
So if I fall asleep laying down flat, like this?
On your back.
No,
not front.
that's not firmly on the ground though,
Okay.
because the weight of your body isn't on your.
Okay, I got you.
Yeah,
What when you're driving car, you're sitting in the car, sleeping.
you're gonna have a crash if you do that.
No. Somebody driving, I
Okay.
have to sleeping.
Yeah.
On the passenger seat.
Yeah.
So do will be okay.
If a person's
On the
sleep,
passenger seat,
Yeah.
sitting and sleeping.
okay.
So
That's-
he's okay. It's hard.
It should be okay because I don't think without force I don't think a person can pass stool in that situation without force because he's still firmly on the seat.
That's
Okay, sleeping on the ground. Okay. It is. Should we end? 9:29. Right, number 7 is related to that, so let's mention that. Lifting of the rear of a sitting, sleeping person from the ground before waking up, even if the person does not fall on the ground. Okay, so just say a person was sitting with his rear firmly on the ground, but then a few seconds before he woke up, half a minute before he woke up, his rear came off the ground, then his wudu would be broken, even if he just woke up after 30 seconds. That's what it's saying here. 8, 9, and 10, becoming unconscious, insane, or intoxicating. For obvious reasons, because a person is not in their senses, so they don't know about their bodily actions. They can't control what's going on with their body. Number 11, loud laughing by a waking adult praying a prayer containing bowing and prostration, as mentioned earlier, right? If a child does it, if a child laughs loud in salah, his wudu will not break. But if an adult laughs loud in salah, it will nullify his prayer. Right. And we're saying a complete prayer, a prayer that has ruku', sujood, qiyam, and everything. And number 12, sexual contact. Sexual contact doesn't mean a person touched their spouse with their hand, like the hand touching hand, okay, or hand rubbing like the arm or something. That's not. By sexual contact, it means that genitals touch without any cloth in between. Because of the heat, it will nullify the wudu. Imam Muhammad bin Hassan Shaybani says, no, it won't nullify wudu unless there is madi that comes out, fluid that comes out. Not mani, because mani nullifies even ghusl. Madi, which is fluid that a person ejaculates due to excitement. Okay, so Imam Muhammad says only if madi comes out, then wudu will be nullified. Otherwise, it will not be. But Imam Hanifa rahimahullah says no, wudu will be nullified because it's very, very rare that a person's genitals touch his spouse's genitals and there is no madi extracted or coming out. It's just very rare because the excitement and the heat and so on and so forth. So he says sexual contact, without any ha'il, without any cloth, will nullify the wudu immediately. Right, we're going to end here, inshallah. Next week we'll do non-nullifying agents. So not next week, but the week after. Next week will be Aqidah again, inshallah. Hadith Jibreel. Next week will be Hadith Jibreel again, inshallah.
When is the socks discussion?
Sorry?
Socks discussion.
So, why you want to come just for that class?